Chapter 1. In the shadow's heat, the first rays of the sun crawled over the edge of the savannah, waking a day that smelled of dust, blood, and expectation. The air already shimmered with heat, though the morning had barely begun. In the distance, the British flag rose over the camp, a red speck against the golden horizon. Beneath, the proud cloth moved men in heavy pith helmets, linen shirts, and boots stained dark with yesterday's mud. Captain Edmund Fairfax, leader of the expedition, stood outside his tent with a cup of strong tea. His face, lined by years in the field, carried the calm of a man who had seen too much and survived. He had faced death before, but never like this. This time, it wasn't glory that drove him, it was vengeance. 2 weeks earlier, the lion they called the King of the River had taken 3 men from their caravan. It struck with a cunning that made Fairfax doubt nature's boundaries. It came by night, silent as smoke, leaving nothing behind but blood and tracks in the sand. Since then, every man in camp slept with his rifle at his side. "Mr. Harrow," Fairfax said, setting down his cup, "we break camp in an hour. I want the trackers ready before the sun climbs too high." James Harrow, his second, nodded. "The trackers say the lion moved toward the southern bank of the Akiri River. They found fresh prints during the night." Fairfax stroked his chin. "Then that's where we go." Behind them, the camp came alive. Voices in English, Swahili, and Afrikaans blended in the thick morning air. The trackers, 2 silent men from the Kikuyu tribe, Mwangi and Kiprotich, sat by the fire sharpening their spears. They spoke little, but their eyes missed nothing. They had seen the lion, and they knew the hunt would not be decided by strength alone, but by wit. When the caravan moved out, the sounds of civilization faded. The rhythm of hooves, the scent of sweat, the burning sun overhead, all mixed into a hypnotic pulse. The day was young, but danger had already awoken. They reached the river by midday. The water lay still, a silver mirror. Across the bank rose a curtain of acacia and tall grass. The trackers stopped and knelt. Mwangi pointed to a deep print in the sand. "Simba Mkubwa," he murmured. "Big lion." Fairfax crouched beside him. "How long ago?" Mwangi lifted his head to the wind. "Maybe 3 hours, he is close." Silence fell. Harrow raised his rifle, a Whitworth, heavy and deadly, and glanced at the captain. "We should wait until dusk," he said. "The wind shifts then, and he hunts in darkness." Fairfax smiled faintly. "Then so shall we." As the sun sank, it painted the sky in blood red. The birds fell silent, only the crickets sang. The expedition camped by the river, but no one rested. Men moved like shadows, preparing their weapons. Mwangi and Kiprotich placed torches in a semicircle, scattering ash to mask their scent. Fairfax sat by the fire, cigarette glowing between his fingers. His thoughts were with the dead, especially Corporal Davies, his old comrade from India. He remembered the screams, the tearing sound of claws against canvas. "He's not just a beast," Fairfax said quietly. "He knows we hunt him, he enjoys it." Harrow met his eyes. "Then we'll end it." Night fell. The sky turned into a sea of stars. The camp lay silent except for the pulsing glow of the fires. The trackers vanished into the grass. Fairfax sat with his rifle across his knees, every sense sharpened. Then a sound, a low rumble, deep and ancient. The lion was near. Harrow stood. "East side," Fairfax nodded. "Hold your line. No one fires till I give the order." They waited. The minutes stretched. Then a flicker of movement in the grass, a shadow between the torches. 2 yellow eyes caught the firelight. Fairfax raised his rifle, breath frozen. A roar shattered the night. The lion lunged, a golden blur. It struck one of the porters and tore him down. Chaos erupted. Gunfire, screams, flame. Fairfax rolled aside and fired. His bullet struck the beast's shoulder, but it didn't stop. It turned, blinded and enraged, and charged straight for him. He saw the jaws open, the teeth like knives. Time froze, then a single shot. Harrow fired. The lion fell, silent, broken, a fallen monarch. Dust rose, blood and gunpowder hung in the air. Fairfax rose slowly. His eyes searched the darkness. "Is it over?" Harrow whispered. Fairfax looked down at the massive body, its fur glowing red in the firelight. "No," he said, "this is only the beginning." Chapter 2. Fire over the savannah. The night lay over the savannah like a burnt shroud. The scent of blood lingered, heavy and sweet in the unmoving air. The fire had died to embers, and around its weak glow the men sat awake, eyes fixed on the dark. It wasn't silence that kept them from sleeping, it was the knowledge that something still moved out there. Fairfax crouched, weary but alert. The lion's body lay a few yards away, a mountain of muscle and blood. The fur still shone red in the firelight, flies already gathering, yet something felt wrong. Harrow's shot had been clean, but not killing. Lions didn't die that quietly. He rose and stepped closer. Even in the night heat, the air seemed to tighten around him. With his boot, he nudged the lion's head. The jaws hung open, but the eyes closed. "This isn't right," he muttered. Harrow joined him, rifle still in hand. "We saw it fall, Captain." "The blood shows it was hurt, not dead," Fairfax interrupted. "Look here." He pointed at the sand. Dark stains surrounded the body, but trailed away as if something had dragged it. Someone or something moved it. Harrow fell silent. Far off, a deep growl rolled through the grass, not triumphant, but answering. "Bloody hell," Harrow whispered. "There were more." Fairfax nodded slowly. A lioness, maybe two. He wasn't alone. Morning came without rest. Smoke rose straight into the still sky. The men moved sluggishly, eyes hollow, hands trembling as they loaded their rifles. Mwangi stood by the riverbank, staring into the mist beyond. "Tracks," he said when Fairfax approached. "Big ones." Eastward, Fairfax followed his gaze. Far across the water, something stirred in the grass. Vultures circled above. "He's not dead," he murmured. "Or someone dragged him there." Harrow joined them. "We follow. Before the heat kills us." Fairfax looked toward the rising sun. "Aye, but with respect. This land punishes arrogance." They crossed the river at dawn's edge. The water was cool, but the sand beyond burned their feet. The land was different here, quieter, heavier. The grass rose tall as men, and the air stank faintly of rot. The trackers moved like shadows, eyes sweeping the ground. After an hour, Mwangi stopped abruptly. He knelt, pressed a hand to the soil. "Not lion alone," he whispered. Fairfax crouched beside him. Between the paw prints were boot marks, narrow, European. "Other hunters," said Harrow. Fairfax's expression hardened. "Or poachers. The colonies crawl with them. Men who sell hides to London for gold they never see." He straightened. "We follow, but carefully. If they found the lion first, they may have done worse than any beast." The sun climbed higher. Sweat burned their eyes. In the distance, a gunshot cracked, then another. Birds burst from the grass. Fairfax and Harrow exchanged a look. "There," the captain said. "Stay low." They moved quickly through the brush until they reached a rise. Below, 3 men stood around a carcass. The lion's carcass. It was flayed open, the hide torn, flesh ruined as if something had clawed its way out. One man, fair-haired and drunk, kicked it. Devil's work, this. The hide split like paper. Fairfax stepped out. "You there? In the king's name, drop your weapons." The men froze. The fair-haired one smirked. "And who the hell are you?" "Captain Edmund Fairfax, British expedition under the governor's command." The man laughed. "Governor's command doesn't reach this far, Captain. Out here, the savannah rules." He lifted his rifle. Harrow fired first. The bullet struck the dirt by his feet. "Drop it," he said coldly. The men hesitated, then obeyed. Fairfax approached, eyes scanning the scene. The lion was truly dead now, but something had changed. Its belly was torn, not by knives. Something had escaped. "What did you do?" Fairfax asked. One of the poachers, eyes wild, answered. "We shot it, but before we got close, it moved, like something was alive inside. We cut it open, it went into the grass." Fairfax felt his blood chill. "What kind of thing?" "I don't know, small, fast." Mwangi's voice trembled. "Simba na pepo," he said. "Lion with spirit." The rest of the day passed feverishly. They burned the remains despite the poachers' protests and returned toward the river. The sky blackened with storm clouds, and the wind carried the scent of rain and iron. Fairfax walked last, uneasy. He heard something, a faint patter like paws in dust. He stopped, raised his rifle. Nothing, only wind. But when he looked down, he saw tracks. Small, deep, not bird, not lion, 4 toes, long claws. His pulse quickened. "We're not hunters anymore," he said quietly. "We are the prey." And somewhere beyond the river, the darkness answered. with a roar that sounded almost human. Chapter 3, The Song of Darkness. The rain didn't come as they hoped. It didn't fall in soothing waves, but in sharp, stinging drops, like the sky itself was warning them. The wind tore through the grass, carrying the scent of ozone and the memory of blood. Fairfax walked ahead in silence. His boots sank into the wet earth. Behind him followed Harrow, Mwangi, and the few men left, worn, sleepless, haunted. They had left the poachers behind, bound and broken. No one wanted to speak of what had moved inside the lion's carcass. By the time they reached the river, it had swollen. The sky was iron grey, and the trees stood like black spears. Fairfax raised a hand. "We camp here, no more marching tonight." The men obeyed, moving sluggishly. Mwangi patrolled the bank, then froze. "Captain, come." Fairfax hurried over. In the mud lay a print, deep, jagged, as if a claw had carved it. "I've never seen tracks like this," Mwangi said. "Not lion, not hyena." Fairfax crouched. The print was fresh. The rain hadn't filled it yet. "It followed us," he said quietly. "Whatever it is." Harrow cocked his rifle. "Then it knows where we are." The night was cold dark. The storm had passed, but the wind whispered through the trees like distant voices. The camp was silent. No one slept. Fairfax sat alone by the fire. His journal lay open, but the pen didn't move. He stared into the flames, seeing reflections of steel and sweat. Then he heard it, a roar, but not a lion's. It was thinner, rasping, like a human voice trying to imitate one. He rose, lifted his rifle. "Wake the men," he said quietly. They moved quickly, loading weapons, lighting torches. Shadows leapt across the sand. Something moved beyond the firelight. A rustle, a step, another. Harrow whispered, "There by the trees." Fairfax saw it, a shape low and fast. He fired. The gunshot tore the night. Something screamed, a sound so shrill it froze the blood. They ran forward. Nothing, only marks in the dirt, as if something had crawled away. "It bleeds," Mwangi said, "but not like an animal. The blood is too dark." Fairfax stared. The liquid shimmered almost black. "We left something behind in that lion," he said, "something that shouldn't exist." At dawn they found the tracks again. They led into a low hill of tangled brush. The soil was strange, harder, darker. Harrow knelt. "See this," he said. "Claw marks, hundreds." Fairfax nodded. "A den or a nest?" Mwangi spat. "Not a nest, a grave." They climbed the hill. The wind carried a new smell, smoke, iron. Beyond the ridge lay the ruins of a camp. A tent, half burned. In the ash, a rifle barrel gleamed. Fairfax bent down. It was British military issue. "Not poachers," he said. "Soldiers." Harrow frowned. "Governor's men?" Fairfax shook his head. "If so, why no word, no report?" Then they heard it, a groan, faint. They rushed forward. Under a torn tent lay a soldier, pale, bloody, barely alive. "Water," Fairfax shouted. Mwangi brought a flask. The man's lips trembled. "Burn it," he rasped. "What?" "The cave. In the hill." They moved inside. They weren't dead. His eyes went glassy. Fairfax stood. "We burn everything." They reached the cave by midday. The entrance was narrow, hidden by roots. A cold breath seeped out, carrying the sweet stench of rot. "Torches," said Fairfax. They entered in pairs. The walls were damp, the ground littered with bones, animal and human. Ropes hung from the ceiling like veins. Deeper inside, the space opened. In the center stood something like an altar, built of stone and bone. On it lay a lion's head, surrounded by carved symbols, circles, spirals, strange markings. Mwangi dropped to his knees. "This is old, very old." Fairfax stepped closer. "What does it mean?" "A call," Mwangi whispered. "A call to something that should have slept." Then came the sound, a sudden scrape behind them. Harrow spun, fired. Something lunged from the dark, striking his shoulder. He fell, shouting. Fairfax fired into the shadows. A shape moved, low and fast, formless but alive. For an instant he saw its eyes glowing red. Then it was gone. "Out," he shouted. Now they fled. Mwangi threw a torch back into the cave. Fire bloomed, swallowing the dark. A deep, almost human moan rose as the flames spread. They stood outside, silent, watching smoke curl into the sky. Harrow sank to the ground, pale. "What was that?" Fairfax looked toward the burning hill, something we should never have woken. Chapter 4, The Last Crown of Fire. The sky burned as dawn broke over the African plain. Smoke from the charred hill hung in the air like a scar. The ground was blackened, lifeless, but at times the ashes stirred, as if something still breathed beneath. Fairfax stood motionless, shoulders heavy. His eyes were bloodshot but clear. The sun rose slowly over the river, merciless. Around him, the men moved like ghosts. Harrow, pale and bandaged, leaned against a tree. Mwangi paced in slow circles, whispering prayers. "We should have left," Harrow rasped. "We should have turned back at the river." Fairfax didn't answer, his gaze fixed on the smoke. "We couldn't, we woke something. Now we finish it." They burned the cave all day. Wood, oil, grass, anything that would catch. The heat struck like hammers. Flames licked stone, splitting it apart. From within came sounds, moans, whispers, and sometimes a deep, guttural roar that shook the ground. By nightfall, silence, only ash remained. Fairfax knelt at the entrance, hand pressed to the earth. It was still warm, still pulsing. "It's not over," he said. Mwangi stood behind him. "That place was not their home, Captain. It was their birthplace. You didn't kill, you freed." Fairfax turned, weary but sharp. "What do you mean?" "Some spirits are bound to flesh," Mwangi said softly. "When the flesh dies, the spirit walks." Fairfax looked into the fire. "Then we released it." "Yes." After midnight the wind came, not gentle but screaming from the earth itself. The campfire blew out. Darkness swallowed them whole. The air grew thick with a sweet, rotten scent. Fairfax rose. "Up. All of you." A rumble rolled through the distance, like stone cracking. Then light. Across the river, a red glow pulsed beneath the earth. "My God," Harrow whispered. Fairfax's face hardened. "It's there, where it began." "We go." They moved through the tall grass, moon hidden by clouds, their world lit only by that red fall sun. When they reached the river, the water was warm, almost boiling. They crossed quickly. On the far bank, hell waited. The valley glowed. The ground shimmered with heat. Trees burned without falling. In the center stood a broken pillar of stone, ancient and cracked. Around it, movement, small, fast, sinuous. Fairfax lifted his rifle, hand trembling. "What in God's name?" One shape stopped. It rose, almost human, its skin like leather, its eyes burning coals. It opened its mouth, and the sound that came was not a roar, not a scream, but both. They fired. Bullets tore through bodies that burned from within. Harrow screamed, hit again but standing. Mwangi hurled a torch. One of the creatures burst into flame but did not fall. "Back!" shouted Fairfax. To the river they ran. The ground quaked. Something followed, tearing through the grass. Fairfax turned, fired, one fell. It lay still. Its eyes still burned. He stepped closer, rifle raised, and heard it speak. "You took my king." The voice was broken but clear. Fairfax froze. "What are you?" His wrath. It smiled, then crumbled to ash. They reached the river at dawn. The sun rose, pale and blood-red. Harrow staggered but lived. Mwangi walked beside him, silent. Fairfax stopped midstream, scanning the grass. Nothing moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. "Is it over?" Harrow asked. Fairfax looked toward the rising sun. "No, things that wake, that remember, they never die, they wait." Mwangi nodded. "The lion always returns." Fairfax stood a long time, then turned. "We go back to the coast. The report dies with us. No one must know." "Why?" Harrow asked. Fairfax looked out over the plain, the wind stirring the ash. "Because London doesn't believe in spirits. And Africa already has too many." He looked down at his hand, soil, blood, ash. "Some kings," he said, "have no thrones, only shadows." They walked away in silence as the sun rose over the kingdom of ash. And somewhere, deep beneath the earth, something opened its eyes. Epilogue. When the ash grows silent 3 months later, a British frigate departed from the port of Mombasa. On deck stood Captain Edmund Fairfax, pale, his hand bandaged. In his luggage rested a worn leather journal, its pages stained with blood, soil, and something darker. He spoke little. His men said he sometimes woke at night and stared out over the sea, as if waiting for something to rise from the depths. When the ship reached Southampton, Fairfax delivered his report to the colonial office. It contained only 3 words: "Mission completed, burn everything." No one asked further, no one wanted to know. But later that year, whispers spread of a beast in a London menagerie that refused to sleep. of roars in the night that made the stone lions tremble, and in a locked cabinet, among dust and forgotten maps, lay Fairfax's journal, unopened, but still warm.